So part of what we're seeing is a backlash, I think. When a big bad bully comes after you, sometimes we go get another big bad bully to fight on our behalf. So part of it is, I think we're seeing a backlash against the so-called moral majority, the right-wing cancel culture, which in some sense preceded, I used to vote for liberals. And when I did, I voted for them in part because I thought they were the people that were going to apply free speech to both sides. That's what they used to say. It used to be a liberal mantra was the way you solve the solution to bad speech isn't less speech, but more speech. That's what liberals in this country. So that's one of the reasons I used to vote for them is I wanted that. And it was conservatives that used to be more likely to favor censorship. That's not true anymore, but that used to be the case. So I think part of it is backlash. So a complicated mix. And I think part of the way out of this is we have to stop the backlash cycle. We're gonna, we're not doomed yet. Western civilization is not doomed yet, but we are headed in this like spiral of you did this to me, so we're gonna now do this to you, which is going to create more authoritarianism on the left, which is then going to create more authoritarianism on the right. And what currently isn't a major problem, we're not on the edge of a cliff yet, but we're inching there. We might get to that cliff if we keep going.
Yeah. The one point there you talk about authoritarianism begets authoritarianism. I'll discuss that later because I want to get to the principles at the end of the book where you talk about the six you've laid out in terms of fighting authoritarianism. But another point you made in that answer was talk about the media and how poor a job they've done, especially when it comes to left-wing authoritarianism. With that in mind, how much has alternative media actually helped to address the balance of that? Because I don't know if they're less biased, but at least you see different views on there. How effective have they been in addressing that bias towards in actually questioning left-wing authoritarianism?
Oh, I mean, honestly, it's one of the main mechanisms that has helped. So yes, I think incredibly effective would be the answer. Now it's a mixed bag. When you have open mics, in a sense, anything can happen, good and bad.
Yeah,
So, you open a mic, it doesn't mean something positive is going to come out of someone's mouth. It's like I used to always say about the U.S. The great thing about the U.S. is that a former professional wrestler, Jesse Ventura, can become, the governor of Minnesota with no political experience. The terrible thing about the U.S. is that a professional wrestler with no governing experience can become the governor of Minnesota. I mean, that's just you live with but alternative media was more, so it's a little bit less structured, and I think that's partially negative. So the media used to have kind of the traditional media, the legacy media as it's sometimes called, used to have a standard of we're going to try to be fair. We're going to present an idea that we're fair. Okay. The U.S. used to have the fairness doctrine, which required people. Reagan got rid of it. It required people when you talked on the radio, for example, you had to present both sides. When they got rid of the fairness doctrine, the first thing that happened was Rush Limbaugh. So you have this, right wing kind of side of things. Now, was that positive or negative? It has pros and cons. So to your point, yes, I do think so. Like take Joe Rogan. Okay. Joe Rogan was really important to Trump winning the election, I think, and he was important to kind of smashing some of the, kind of bias in the media, and he's huge and important. And I saw a Democrat saying we need our own Joe Rogan, and I was like, you had it, your own Joe Rogan. His name was Joe Rogan. You threw him under the bus because you wouldn't listen to him. So yes, to your point, yes, it's huge. Because open information is bad for authoritarianism generally. Now, the flip side is you get the Twitterverse, you get a lot of people on the fringe, and I don't mean this derogatorily, but just literally on the fringe. Sometimes they have a point and sometimes they don't, who are saying kind of anything that comes to their minds, kind of wacky things that turn out to not be very helpful, or themselves are authoritarian, in a different direction. So I think, free speech, open mics are messy. I just don't like the alternative to it. Yeah. But to your question, yes, I'm sorry, I went a long way around to answer your question, which was yes, I do think the alternative media was vital, hugely important, and I think if we shut that down, we are in deep trouble right now. because they're a challenge to the power, and we need challenges to that power.
You mentioned their social media, and I wonder with authoritarianism, isn't one of the problems we've had in not fighting it is that, how can I put this, almost a lack of principles now from a lot of people. So I'll give you an example. If you look at, say, free speech, and I look at the platform, well, Twitter now called X, obviously, with Elon Musk. I remember before Elon Musk took over, you had a situation where a lot of conservative commentators were being effectively cancelled on that platform. Their their accounts were being deactivated, sometimes with no reason. Even for the most minor thing, they were being cancelled. Even if they weren't necessarily talking about a particular group in a derogatory way, because they had a certain point of view, they're almost being cancelled. Elon Musk buys buys that platform, and now the inverse has happened, where it's almost you're getting almost a lot of left-wing views like leave, and actually a lot of left-wing people are actually leaving that platform and going to the others like Blue Sky and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, there seems to be a complete 180 from both sides. Before Twitter, this is who liked us free speech, this is who didn't, and then after, so and then when it became X under Elon Musk, then it seems to be the inverse. Whereas I'm looking at it, I'm thinking both sides have been wrong at a certain point. There seems to be no principle in terms of free speech is good, period. And so therefore, shouldn't that be the main focus? And is one of the problems of authoritarianism and fighting is that we tend to have a lack of principles. That's more about as long as our group wins, and that's all that matters.
100%. Yes. Authoritarianism, the best antidote psychologically to authoritarianism and culturally is a principle that's applied equally to both sides. Authoritarianism cannot survive if we have leadership that will apply a principle like free speech and use the exact same standard for both sides. You're going to let your opponent say the same kind of stuff that you get to say. Okay. So if you get to say the word idiot, they get to say the word idiot. If on a forum that word is not acceptable, as you can live with that as long as both sides have the exact same standard and it's not applied